The format for the event will allow each panelist to share what new technologies they are implementing to enhance learning in the workplace. Once we hear from all 4 of our panelists today, we'll open up for the audience to ask questions. Please type questions for our panelists in the Q&A box. And panelists, please refrain from answering until we reach the question and answer portion so that we can keep everything recorded and live for those that were unable to attend. Before we get started, I'll introduce myself. I am Nicole Afton with Pryor Learning Solutions. I've created these events and I'm using them as my own personal journey of development, learning how to host webinars, run webinars, etc. It's been a very eye-opening experience and a great learning experience for me as a public speaking venue. I'm not an awesome public speaker. It's probably one of the things at the very bottom of my list, but it's helped me open up. I am a continuous learner. I feel engaged and empowered, learning from the experience and wisdom of my network, as well as sharing my experience gained through over 20 years in sales, marketing, and operations management. The Journey of Development events is a way to continue my own development and help support others with their growth and development. Through Pryor, I work as a consultant to organizations to improve communication, collaboration, and culture across all levels of their organizations through customized programs designed specifically to meet their strategic learning goals through live and online learning programs. Our first panelist today is Anna, and Anna, I'm going to do my best. Samorukova.
You just got it perfectly. Samorukova is
awesome.
Just perfect, or the way you said it.
Awesome. Anna creates engaging learning experiences that help and inspire people to reach the next level of their potential and lead to organizational and personal growth. Anna's passion is in game-based, simulation-based, and experiential learning. Anna has shared a poll that I'm going to launch now to everyone. If you don't mind taking a moment to share your responses, we'll share that with Anna as she's going through her presentation. You want to wait for the poll results, Anna?
Yes, let's wait for the poll results. That may affect our conversations.
All right. So integrating various technologies stays in the lead. Mm-hmm. The next is knowing what is available. We ended with a tie, deciding which technology to deploy and cost, and long learning curve by the end user at 13%.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Nicole. Nicole, thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of this wonderful panel today and for all of the work and efforts that you're putting out there to bring these webinars to life for everyone who is interested in and passionate about the learning and development space. And with this, I will start out briefly about us, what we do. We create and deliver innovative learning experiences for personal and organizational growth and impact. And it falls into various areas. The key for us is to create something meaningful that we can deliver through very immersive, very engaging experiences and unleashing the potential at the personal level, individual level, and at organizational level. And the work falls into various areas of learning experience design and development and delivery. That's e-learning, virtual facilitated learning, in-person facilitated learning, and a blended learning, which can include all kinds of options, modalities, and combinations of everything mentioned before, and with the different tweaks and additions and elements. Let's take a moment here to think about what is impactful learning experiences, of what contributes to the creation and delivery of the impactful learning experience. The first one is the engagement. We all know this. We have heard it so many times. It's out there. The engagement is critical for creating impactful learning experiences that stays with the learner. Application is allowing the learner to practice the skills and knowledge that is being learned in the learning program during the program and after, and very important, it's application after the program. And the third element is the retention of what was learned. And we use all different kinds of approaches to achieve this, but again, it falls under a very specific area of creating something immersive that can be game-based or simulation-based or scenario-based, because those kinds of learning experiences would create or deliver the highest engagement levels, so would allow for application of the knowledge and skills, and also for the retention of what was learned. And that's, of course, given that with the well-designed, whether it's a simulation or game-based or scenario-based. And it doesn't have to be technology-based. It can be low-tech or high-tech. And, of course, with the concepts, application of the concepts of autonomy, challenge, and collaboration also in person and in the virtual space. And to achieve all of this, we look at the technology with the primary goal for us is to find an optimized use of technology. Whatever work we do, whatever projects we do, it's the optimized use of technology. And what it means to us is the technology does not determine what we're doing and why we're doing it. It is we go back to our initial purpose of the learning experience, what we're trying to deliver and what we're trying to create for the learner and for the organization. If we think about the technology, it is so broad right now and will continue to be so over many years to come. There are many options, there are various capabilities, and everything is developing very fast. So how do we stay focused on the purpose of the learning and development, what our goals are in the learning and development space, and our desired ultimate outcomes for the learning that we create and deliver? And technology, when technology was in the learning and development space, was just in initial stages. It was mostly still around in face-to-face kind of interactions and programs, and eventually developed into platforms and tools to develop learning that the learner can take or undertake at their own pace and time at different locations, at different times of the day and different parts of the world. So let's take a look at the technology and the modalities of learning and how we need to keep in mind the engagement when we think about how the technology may be applied in various modalities of learning. So on this chart, I have different combinations of how we can deliver learning. It can be facilitated virtually, which is probably reducing very at a certain pace currently, facilitated virtually. Everybody's moving more into digital space and self-paced space. Self-paced virtually, in teams with individual deliverables, purely individual, self-paced with some facilitation, and facilitated in person. So facilitated in person, that's the modality that's probably is can be the most engaging when we have everybody in the room and we can collaborate. Facilitated virtually has a big space right now, the big spot right now in this learning and development space, like we are in the same webinar right now, and we can have a facilitator or the instructor guide us through the learning materials. So there are all kinds of programs available out there. It is a growing field, and facilitated in person, that it carries a special niche, facilitated in person kind of modality, because of various costs and bringing people from different parts of the world. So there are different obstacles to continue to develop this mode of delivery. And companies, from our experience, companies reserve this for only what can be the most effectively delivered in person, for only those situations, and everything else is being supplemented or replaced with other modalities of learning. But what's critical, if we look at these modalities in combinations of learning and delivery, the highest risk of disengagement is in the mode of self-paced virtually, when the learner is by themselves, himself or herself, going through the slides, clicking through the buttons, or playing a game, whatever that is, with the technology, one-on-one with the technology. That's the highest risk of disengagement. And if the program is not engaging enough, we may lose that learner at a 90% rate, if not 100. So this is a very high risk of disengagement, and if we know that engagement is one of the success factors of the learning experiences, this is the area where we have to mitigate that risk of disengagement. And that mitigation can come from creating blended learning, creating virtual teams, collaboration with different teams from different parts of the world, somewhere where the learner is not fully isolated. And our approach to learning technology is to work around these potential risks of disengagement, specifically in the self-paced mode of delivery and learning, is we understand the learner. We need to understand the learner. We need to understand the mindset of the learner from a functional role perspective and organizational role perspective. We need to understand the organization. We also need to understand obstacles to learning, such as whether the content is too technical. And if we have a self-paced program with highly technical content, unless the person has a very high intrinsic motivation, most likely that will not be an effective kind of learning. Other obstacles to learning, what we found in our work, is fear of failure, although it's not stated as such. But to give you an example, if in a business and financial acumen type of learning, many people say we're not numbers, I'm not numbers person. It's not because of some inabilities, but mostly because of some fear of numbers. And so working with these obstacles to learning, we can create very engaging and effective programs. And purpose of the learning experience that we are developing and designing aligned with organization's purpose and goals. And once we define all of this, then we look at the technologies that we want to use for this specific program to achieve the most effective and impactful result of that learning experience for both the learner and organization. So all of those fundamentals of learning design and learning experience design, they are still true even when we have this very fast-paced and very fastly developing space within technology. So still optimized use of technology where we can leverage the capabilities of the technology to deliver the most effective learning. And just to have an overview of some of the specific tools we are using. For e-learning, we use Articulate and Adobe Captivate, and Articulate probably to a much higher and greater degree. And we do create very highly interactive programs in Articulate, and Articulate supports it. And we have seen and we have heard that the level of interaction that we can create with Articulate are at the level of custom coded in learning program, e-learning program. So Articulate does support it. They now have Articulate Rise, which allows the developer designer to create very interactive and very cool and sleek programs, e-learning programs for mobile devices. So without recreating or developing our own something that would be very custom and may not live for too long, we're using existing tools that actually are being developed as we speak as well, with new capabilities and new functionalities. And we found that it works very well for us. For the blended learning, it's Articulated Adobe Captivate, again, some mobile platforms, very much looking into application of the mobile technologies. Not so much for the games themselves, but more for reinforcement, program reinforcement, post-program reinforcement of the learning and application through some short either quizzes or questions or challenges that we can communicate to the learner post-program, and that they can respond in at their own time and at their own pace. And one of the providers of this mobile technology is Aquinas Training, and we work with them on the future application of the mobile technology, mobile learning technology in the work that we do. All kinds of collaboration tools. One of them is very popular nowadays is Slack, but there are all kinds of options out there as well. And they vary from very free to can be very expensive. So it all depends, again, before breaking the budget, we want to look at what are we trying to get out of using this tool and what's the most effective way of using it at the most effective cost level. Live audience participation, that's for live kind of programs. There are excellent tools out there, very simple, and at the very basic level, most of them are free. Mentimeter, Poll Everywhere, and they're very easy to use. At the same time, they engage the audience, and there are all kinds of variations of how they can be applied. Adaptive e-learning, that's an emerging area in the learning and development technology space, and we have been learning and discussing potential work with Interact by Skillytics, and this is a platform which is much more comprehensive than Articulate, and it's somewhat different, but what the platform allows for is to adjust the program, adjust the e-learning experience based on the responses from the learner, but at a much more comprehensive level. So there's a lot of data analytics behind the responses, behind what the learner is doing on the screen. So it's much more adaptive. And there is a longer curve for development of the programs in using this platform, but it is a great potential. And this is where the e-learning will be going toward over the next few years. And of course, everybody's heard about VR, AR, and we're also hearing that mobile VR is one, probably the easiest, less expensive technologies that can be utilized with very low time for development, short time for development, and relatively low cost. So that's one of the things. We are not necessarily using this actively, and we would, if we were used to VR, AR, mobile VR, it would be more like integrating into our blended learning approach. So that's what I'd like to share with you today about technologies, and the key is to staying true to the purpose of the learning experience design. Thinking about the learner, thinking about the organization, thinking about the purpose of learning and the business goals of the organization that we're creating learning and development programs for. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Our next panelist is Poppy Hill. She is a learning and development leader, organizational development expert with a bachelor's degree in education science from Central Michigan University and a master's degree in instructional technology from Wayne State University. She also has the coveted Certified Performance Technologist certification awarded by the International Society of Performance Improvement. Poppy uses her skills to manage and create engaging solutions for human resources and business units in the learning and organizational development functions. She creates overall learning and development strategies utilizing e-learning and other wearable technologies that increase key indicators for companies such as customer satisfaction, loyalty, and her personal favorite, employee engagement. In 2015, her online global academy was launched and received an Innovation High Five Award for creatively improving content development while speeding up the process and increasing employee engagement by 50%. Poppy's work has also been featured at International Society of Improvement functions and global seminars around the world. Her passion is to spread the word that keeping employees counts, both culturally and to the bottom line success of the company. She is also a passionate facilitator, engaging, humble, and ready to learn more, and most importantly, a great listener and observer that allows her to pinpoint areas of need and focus of solutions appropriately. Poppy, with that, are you ready to take it away?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. That was quite an introduction that that you gave me, so thank you. That was a great presentation that we just heard about learning and its global applications all over. I love how you focused on the 90% disengagement of learners when they're on their own. That's something I didn't know, and it's something I'm charged to create all the time. So I appreciate those facts because I do realize that we need to do more in that area. I personally work for a corporation. I left the logo off simply because of logo reasons that we didn't want to share quite yet, because some of the things we're doing aren't up and running to full capacity. But I come from the other world where I work right for the corporation. I look for learning agencies to help when we can, but a lot of times it's up to me to just manage the projects and manage the people that I have as subject matter experts to be my trainers. So it's a really interesting job, but I get a lot of experience learning everything. The technology I would like to share with you today is Google Glasses. We've done an amazing project working right with Google to make these glasses that are specifically designed to work with our auditors. We're a global company and we have auditors that go around the world and they audit food safety plants and supply chain for automotive, aerospace. So you name the country, we've probably been there. But as you know, it's hard to get to every country, and some countries are dangerous. So that's one of the reasons we started using these, is not enough experts, but more and more facilities needing this auditing. So this was one way to do it. The other one is in the area of learning and development. And I am going to go ahead and show you this short video so you can see what it looks like to wear the Google glasses yourself. You can have someone on the other end at headquarters who is the expert helping you and talking to you, and it's kind of one-on-one training. We call it witness auditing, but this is a little bit different, and we can eventually hopefully offer this for our customers too that need help in certain areas. So I'll show you this quick movie, and you can pretend you're wearing the new Google glasses.
Wearable technology is that future. Technologies that will transform the way we conduct business in the food industry, as well as have a huge impact on our day-to-day lives. iSucceed, through its work with Google and other major players, is at the forefront of the development of these technologies, and is helping to lead this revolution within the food industry, with process patents dating back to the spring and summer of 2015. Be part of this revolution, which will change how we facilitate training and improve execution on a global scale. The world has become a much smaller place. We see greater efficiency with knowledge transfer occurring almost instantaneously around the globe. We are removing the need to physically be in a location in order to perform audit and product inspections. We are eliminating the high cost of travel by allowing you to virtually connect from your office to any location around the globe. Take a leap into the future with the smart training program that avoids the shortcomings of existing training modalities. The revolutionary hands-free wearable devices will provide an interactive learning experience, where employees are no longer required to understand written procedures or recipe cards. No more learning away from workstations through video or e-learning programs, or even viewing monitors or tablets at their stations. Avoiding the high costs of peer-to-peer training and the inconsistencies such training brings. These issues are all in the past. With wearable devices, employees are free to move around their workstations and enjoy a full range of movement. With their hands free and a full range of view, they will learn intuitively, directly, and interactively with the assistance of prompts from expertly prepared training video sequences. Smart training applications are just the beginning. Imagine, if you can, that each training action point becomes a mapped piece of data. Data that is uploaded to the cloud. Data that can be used to identify the specific actions associated with each task. One step further, and see a scenario where a wearable device can use that bank of data to determine when an employee deviates from the correct procedure. Not only will that error be detected, but the device will also intervene and provide visual corrective prompts, all the while logging these actions into the cloud. Wearable technology merged with ambient intelligence. iSucceed is bringing together the power of augmented reality and wearable technology to transform how the food industry addresses real-world challenges like high labor costs, employee training, and consistent execution. The future of smart training and food safety is here today with iSucceed.
Okay, hopefully most of you could hear that. But if you couldn't, I think you can get a good idea. Even if the sound goes out, you can see where that virtual learning shows you exactly, oops, wrong spot. And it's a great way to train. It's also a great way for you to do much more complicated things, like go on an audit with a new auditor and look at everything, the machines, the calibrations, and talk to them and have that expert not have all those travel costs. And we don't have enough experts to audit everywhere. So those two things have been addressed. So the witness training and the virtual auditing are the two different ones. We've already been auditing in some of the dangerous places in the world by using these. I think it was Afghanistan. We just couldn't get there. It was too dangerous. And this company was going to lose their certification. But through the use of these glasses, we were able to virtually do the audit. So we have the virtual auditor. And that's what I was just talking about. We have the hardware that is very light, designed so you're hands-free. One of the things, I don't know if you got out of that, but you can record these. So we can record what's happening in these audits and use it later to train the workers and say, hey, look, here's what's happening. We need to correct this. It's good for memory, for them to remember what they should correct, because you don't always write down notes, or you don't always write down what people are throwing at you. And it's also good for the people that are doing the audit next year to look at the old one and say, okay, I got to focus on here and see if they fix this. How can we help them? That sort of thing. So that's also what the software does. You've seen the video. It points out areas you can go to. A lot of it is you can just with your eyes focus in and move around and look at the salt shaker, and it'll say this is salt for the sandwich. Well, obviously we use that for much more complex items besides salt shakers. It could be a calibration new machine and the auditor doesn't know. We can have them look at it and explain certain things just by eye movement. So it's all hands-free. And like you said, it's engaging. It's completely engaging. You're with the other person. You have someone on the other line. And it's really been a great success. Customers love it because they can even get our prices can go down. We can do more audits, and we can get audits to places that we couldn't to before because we didn't have the experts. All right, so that was a very short presentation, but I wanted you to see that we're using it, the virtual reality. We have used it. We're still doing a lot more on the training side. And as far as calibration, when people aren't living up to standards or they're not meeting their objectives, or they have a poor performance review, we target those areas, and we use real mentors across the world to help people get to where they need to be, versus, which Nicole said earlier, my passion is to keep the people we have. We go through so much to find these people. We recruit them. We pay so much in benefits and training. We don't want to lose them because they're getting a bad performance review. We want to calibrate them and get them to the next level. And this is a way to do it. So that's why I've chosen this as to be one of my projects that I'm involved in and really leading. And I hope that you can get some ideas on how to integrate virtual reality into your own training programs.
Next, we have Mike Pino. He is a seasoned learning technologist who not only just got off a flight, in May 2017 joined Cognizant to help drive digital transformation through the learning function as the global learning partner for Cognizant digital business. Prior to joining Cognizant, he joined GE's world-famous Crotonville Leadership Development Team in 2014 to advance the company's strategy and learning technologies, resulting in the launch of the award-winning SmartBits microblogging network and Brilliant You learning experience platform. With nearly 2 decades of experience in the industry, he's had the opportunity to work with more than 30% of Fortune 500 companies and more than 10% of the Global 2000 over the past decade in the capacity of VP Research at Corporate University Exchange and Director Technology Innovation at Harvard Business Publishing's Corporate Learning Division. In each of these roles, he's worked with some amazing colleagues that not only to bring new products and services to life, such as Leadership Direct, a product that brought Harvard Business School professors virtually around the globe to help companies address specific challenges, but also to refresh well-known products such as Harvard's Management Mentor, which he converted from a CD-ROM product to an online learning product, then extended into mobile learning. He has been a regular member of Bob Little's global list of movers and shakers in online learning. Mike has presented, moderated, and keynoted at numerous global conferences and has served as adjunct faculty at Providence College, Queens College, and New Jersey Institute of Technology. He holds a PhD from the Graduate School and University Center of the City University of New York. He is the co-founder of a firm dedicated to developing learning technology for higher education in India and globally, and he holds patents in several learning technologies. With that, Mike, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for the background noise. I am indeed in the airport, and I wanted to just sort of pause here for a moment. We've had two really good presentations that frame up the larger context, both of the business realities of the learning function, as well as its application on the ground. And I think that these are two really strong presentations. I really enjoyed both of the presentations. I want to actually take a step back and look at the technologies undergirding all of this, because probably the fastest changing part of this space is the technology, and probably the hardest thing to keep track of is the technology, mainly because, quite frankly, the space is changing so fast that it's hard to keep track which vendors have what capabilities are there, and how do you make them work with each other. Interoperability is generally like an afterthought in a lot of vendors as they rush a product to market. And so a real challenge that exists in this space, if we want to produce results in our businesses and we're trying to actually bring learning into this space where we increase engagement and we thus improve retention of key employees, and we make sure that we upskill and reskill at a reasonable cost and time to deliver performance. Some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that exist really are understanding some of the breakthroughs that are happening in technology. So I'm going to highlight three concepts, and I'm going to pause and give a lot more time for conversation. So the first concept I want to focus on is the use of language. And what I'm going to actually talk about here is we are moving into a space where voice technology and text technology are starting to merge, and some of the capabilities in AI and machine learning, intelligence augmentation, artificial intelligence, machine learning allow us to do some very interesting things with what we do in the development space. The challenge is you've got to basically hotwire a lot of this stuff together. A lot of players in the space don't have that kind of stuff. But the emerging concept here that you really need to be thinking about now, and it's hidden from a lot of people, is all of the metadata and all of the taxonomy for your materials. If a lot of companies actually have skill definitions, and a lot of companies have competency models. One thing I've noticed in my years of travel are that there's rarely a librarian or an information architect involved in making sure that there's some consistency and a controlled vocabulary around that. And part of the problem that exists is that if you have inconsistency in language, you end up having longer term problems. And so this technology that exists that can really take us further is going to have an initial problem, and that problem exists in incoherent or incongruent language. So here's an example of that. Negotiation, for instance, in a sales context is pretty straightforward. It suggests one or two parties discussing one or more issues and finding ways to agree on some compromise or alternatives so that both parties get something of value from the exchange. Negotiation, however, in a technology space can mean something entirely different. And for those that have been around technology for a long time, and the first and immediate thing that generally pops in people's minds are client-server negotiations. Just the 0.06 seconds that when you have your web page called by a browser, what happens in that point in time. Same word, different context means completely different thing, and that's part of the challenge here. Second concept I want to talk about, so the first is really language, and something that we can be doing right now that will have long-term benefits as these technologies start to settle and some of the vendors start playing out in the space, is being ready to leverage that. The second thing that is really starting to emerge as a real problem in the space, and a real opportunity, is that there is inconsistency on demonstrating application of gained skill. And part of the reason for that is the research and the materials that come from the academic space generally stop at knowledge acquisition, which is great if you need to know something. But in most of the contexts that we've seen today on this presentation have been about doing something, not knowing something. And that's a whole step further. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of academic research that can be applied here. And the materials that exist to demonstrate application of skill are generally weak at best. There are a few different models that have been working, but they're very painful, slow, and require a lot of manual oversight. Some things that are actually emerging in this space, which are kind of interesting, relate to how do you capture practice? How do you show people's experience? And so some of the things that are being demonstrated with some good effect relate to that. And this is really where people are taking a technical skill, for instance, let's say they're programming in Ruby or Ruby on Rails, and they're producing some sort of solution to a problem that's been presented to them. You can record them working through the problem and their solution to the problem and their explanation of the problem. And that becomes part of a portfolio that you can present to other people, so you can evaluate more quickly someone's capabilities because you actually have evidence of their capabilities. And you have some evidence of them talking about them in the context of solving problems. So this is an area that's starting to emerge as well. There are a lot of different tech players in this space. Unfortunately, none of them have a full solution. And it comes back to the interoperability problem again. And the third area that's really kind of a critical need in this space as we, as we think about some of the things that are emerging and changing are as the automation changes the way work happens and really makes the kind of work which is creative or innovative or shows a certain amount of human intervention. That is to say, the machine-aided human work, as compared to the human-aided machine work, which is stuff that can be automated and is being automated faster and faster. These kinds of skills, the change in that require a different way of thinking about teams and team performance. And unfortunately, we've got a very interesting problem when we talk about teams. And so this third problem I just want to present to you and sort of say this is really a frontier that has to be tackled. And some of us are actually doing some work in this space, but there's really not, there's some leading approaches, but there's no real inclusive, this is the right way forward. We train individuals, but we recognize that work is done in an organization by teams. We don't know how to assemble teams quickly, how to pick out whether you have the right skills on the team, how do you actually make a team high performing. So a lot of these areas become a lot of art and a lot less science. And the real challenge that we have here is actually thinking about learning and development, not in the individual sense, but also in the collective sense. So thinking about teams, team building, and team performance, and how do you actually integrate the machine elements to help you understand the human elements better. And so as we get better with automation, the hope is that we'll actually get better at understanding how to assemble teams more quickly how to get the most out of the teams, whether it's creating something new, resolving some new problem, or innovating for a client solution. But in all of these cases, there's a lot of discussion and best practices, but there's no better practices, nor is there anything that helps actually encourage continual improvement over time in this collective sense of performance. So those three areas, I think, are the challenges of our time. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that there's any provider out there that has solutions for all three. There are a lot of things that are emerging that show promise in this space. But the challenge that you're going to face in the meantime is how do you integrate these? In the meantime, the three areas that really do need to be thought of and be thought as we watch skills change and requirements for skills change, and we see the shelf life for certain technical skills reduced from, say, 5 to 7 years, which is the typical horizon for a typical software development language. So sometimes in the case, in some spaces, it's less than 6 months. And in other cases, new languages and new approaches are coming out that have nothing on the shelf. So how do you help actually address this? And the three areas that I think we could be putting some time in as professionals and leaders in the space are: 1, language; 2, performance, and showing evidence of performance; and 3, thinking through collective performance and how do you actually develop that. So I'm going to stop there and really use that as a sort of way to frame out where the technologies are heading and some of the challenges that we have to face. And I'll pass the microphone back to Nicole.
Mike, before you step off, you mentioned there were a number of emerging technologies in the spaces, but none are addressing all three. Can you maybe name a couple that you feel are doing the best out of what is available?
You know, the hard thing about actually naming things that are the best are that, you know, it's the best at a point in time based on what you understand. So I've seen some very interesting technology. So one of the things that I've actually been watching recently is a new company that's come out of the West Coast called Pendexio that's focused on wisdom distillation. And the problem that's trying to be solved here is how do you improve collective awareness and know-how, not merely of knowledge sharing, but wisdom sharing. And the distinction between knowledge and wisdom is as follows. Knowledge is really information applied to practice, where wisdom is actually understanding the context of knowledge. So that piece is really where a lot of tacit skills exist. And the company that I've seen doing some really interesting things in that space is Pendexio. But I could probably list about 50 that are doing some really interesting things, but I wouldn't say anyone's the best. What I would say is they're interesting. They're making some significant progress. But that said, I don't know that any of them are final end state solutions that I say, bam, that's it. That's the one we go with. And basically, as a global learning leader, some of the things that we actually look at with technology is really, how do we build something so that we could swap out parts as new technologies come on board without impacting the experience from the end user's perspective? And so what we've been really focused on our space is creating a thin layer of experience, forcing everything through APIs and microservices so that you're not actually interacting with any particular interface. You have a single interface, but you're getting all of the pieces that you need in order to get the experience that you need to support. I'll stop there. How's that, Nicole?
That's good. I appreciate it. Our next panelist is Lauren Warren, and she was unable to join us today, but Lauren shared her presentation. She attended DevLearn this past week, and so she prepared a presentation that I'll share with you on her behalf from things that she's learned from the event. First, Lauren Warren got into this field because she loves learning and uses her talent for communications to take complex ideas into something fun and tangible for Buckman's associates so that will enjoy learning too. She used to run all the security and fraud training for a regional bank and is now half of a 2-person team to run training for a global chemical company. Yes, all from beginning to end training, web and in-person design and tracking with 2 people. They have unique challenges, which is why technology is so useful. It bridges the global divide and helps them accomplish more faster. I think that sounds like a pretty strong challenge. In brief, everything she's sharing today came out of DevLearn, a conference she attended last week. She highly recommends this up to others. It was put on by eLearning Guild and tagged with 3,200 learning professionals from around the world. The keynote speakers, project demonstrations, working sessions, and more. We heard from thousands of, or hundreds of industry leaders on what kind of technology to implement. At the end, she'll list out some additional resources for everyone to check out. This image was shown in about a third of the sessions she went to. She said, just wow, we have to meet people where they're at and be inventive with the way we present information. If we have 1% of their work week, this means 24 minutes a week or 4.8 minutes a day. We need to almost trick them into thinking they're not in a learning session. And you know what? A lot of people she met use PowerPoint. It's okay, just use the tool very well. They're online 27 times a day. Make it easy for them to find information. This might require creativity and the understanding that not everything has to be tracked. If someone spends time there, spends 3 days in a workshop, give them some little tidbits after as a refresher. 76% of people watch a micro video every day. 44% watch one every week. Think about things that show up on your social media feed. Remember what we talked about, mimicking what people are already doing off work, those natural tendencies to absorb information. Micro video has compelling statistics on why it should be used. The good news is that nowadays, everyone is a videographer with their iPhone. You don't have to get fancy if you don't have access to a light kit or a green screen. Remember, micro video is not about being short, it's about being focused. The first 30 seconds, they decide if it's important. Then 70% finish. Over to the right is the formula for the links and how to set up the video. Note, there's no need to double prime a topic. If they went to an ILT and they know they need to learn a sales process, don't use the beginning of your precious time to prime them for why they need to learn the sales process. Just jump in. She created a micro video using Camtasia and PowerPoint, and you can link micro things into a macro experience. Think about how micro video can complement larger learning. This might be a baby basic topic, but about 50% of the people she met were looking at updating their onboarding programs. She met one person who turned their program from stage on stage to a board game, where the new hire had to collect tokens from all departments and answer questions about their global offices in order to move forward. Pulling certain cards had them faced with on-the-job decisions that could either push them forward a space or backward. It was really inventive. The point of this is just to remind people that onboarding is crucial, and it's often overlooked and gets leftovers of technology. She was in a session of about 100 people. The presenter said to raise your hand if you do a podcast. One person raised their hand. Next, the presenter said to raise your hand if you listen to a podcast. Everyone raised their hand. Do you see that gap? There are lots of resources online for how to set up the podcast, the structure, etc. Her point is to just utilize it. This is a trend that's in other industries, and ours is not using it to its full advantage. And guess what? If you're doing a podcast, you already have amazing material. Might as well take video at the same time. Or you can transcribe the words into text and create a blog post. Someone said to me, it can sound overwhelming, especially when it gets to equipment, but your learner needs something now. Would you rather have them have something good when they need it, or great and it be too late? Another takeaway was augmented reality can sound really, really intimidating. But let her explain it this way. This is the real future. Augmented reality is when you look at a screen and you see the real world, but there's an overlay that distorts the real world just a little bit. Think about Pokemon Go or Snapchat filters that put dog ears on your head. It's about 75% real and 25% augmented. It can bring anything to you and is great for microlearning and performance support. On the other hand, virtual reality, which is a little more intense, is immersive. That's when you put on goggles and you're taken anywhere. It's about 25% real and 75% augmented. She watched a presentation where the learner was walking through a hospital floor and talking to patients, practicing bedside manners as a nurse. For the purpose of the session, they were talking about augmented reality, but it's important to know the difference that they are both up and coming and becoming cheaper to implement. If you can, download the app Zappar on your screen and you'll see it come to life. Zappar is a tool that she learned in under an hour, and it's already being adopted at her company. You can print the AR code, AR for augmented reality, and hang it around your office so people get up-to-date news, watch a video, see a sneak peek of a presentation, do a scavenger hunt, and more. This is a new way of gamification. The new learners will spend as much time gaming as they do in school. Again, meet learners where they are, have fun playing around. For an amazing VR experience, Google George Keane, K-E-A-N-E, at DevLearn, The Little Mermaid. This guy designed a ton of Disney characters, and at the end of his speech about creativity and embracing technology as a tool to tell your story, he drew Ariel in front of us using a VR headset. And there's the DevLearn link. Some of the sessions have been uploaded on the site. Check it out. She'd love to network with anyone about these topics. She'll be implementing these in the next 12 months. And she'd love to hear what you're doing. And again, not as a competition, but as sharing with others in the industry. And says, thank you for your time. That brings us to the question and answer portion. If you have any questions, you're welcome to submit them. I wanted to throw another question out to Mike and also out to each of our other panelists. As these new technologies are emerging, and as Mike had shared about how they're, no one's addressing like all the 3 points that he brought up, the concerns, but some of them are kind of leading the way. How are you staying up to date with what's out there when there are so many different providers?
So Nicole, that's a fabulous question. Can you hear me? Hold on a second.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. It's a fabulous question, and the real challenge here is that you have to actually focus on two different and distinct problems. The first problem is the business of technology, and the second is the technology itself. So the way that, I tend to do it, and I've been doing it for over a decade, is I tend to follow people who I think are really pioneering and do some interesting things, that tend to write blogs, or we share notes and comments with each other, or we participate. And making a small network, believe it or not, helps actually disseminate some of these concepts a lot more quickly, some of the challenges that people are facing and how they're addressing it. And that'll help you start to see what's on the horizon. It won't help you understand the business, however, of technology. So understanding the cool things that are out there, unless you're planning to actually implement them yourselves and write your own code, which some people can do and do. If you're actually looking to work with partners and look with vendors, you really have to pay attention to the business of it. And there are 3 great conferences that do that. One of them is the Learning Technologies Conference, which is in London and in Singapore. Singapore is happening in about a week's time. London's at the end of January. And the third one is the ASU GSV Educational Technologies Conference. And that usually happens in Southwest United States in the end of April, the beginning of May. And those 3, the first 2 actually give you the largest view of emerging space vendors. So these are people that are really moved past alpha, and they're now taking data to market, trying to find customers. In the third conference, you're actually seeing the alpha products. And what's interesting about the ASU GSV Summit is that it brings together the practitioners, it brings together the investors, and it brings together the hopeful providers of technologies and services. And so what you actually get to watch there are the companies that tend to invest in learning technologies, what kind of money they're putting in what. And so that helps you understand some of the the kinds of flows of money, the kinds of development that's happening, and what you might be able to expect in about 12 to 18 months. So if you're in a space where you need to really keep track of how the money is shifting and where the market is going, that's the best conference to go to. But the first two will give you a sense of what's out there. And that'll give you a sense of the business side of it. The other place that you really want to kind of pay attention to is build up a network. The easiest way to do it is you could start looking at Bob Little's list. About half of the people on Bob Little's list actually have blogs. Follow the blogs and start if you don't like the guy's blog or the lady's blog, go to someone else. There's plenty of folks out there, and the point is to building up that network is going to help you start to understand what's emerging, what's changing, what people are thinking about. And the more that you pay attention to that, the better you'll be able to talk about it to your business partners, and you'll be able to actually articulate how this might be some investments they need to consider. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully that helps answer your question, Nicole.
Anna, do you have any recommendations?
In terms of people to follow?
No, Anna.
Probably have...
On the one of the other panelists.
Nicole, I agree with Mike at all different levels, including the business side. There are different resources, different channels where to learn, even LinkedIn. Often the information comes through LinkedIn, Twitter, and I wouldn't even say anymore. Mike just said it perfectly.
Awesome. No questions have come in about any of the presentations from our audience. If the audience has any questions, type them in. I know we're a little bit long. With that gap, I'm wondering, from a panelist perspective, after you've now heard each other's kind of presentations, do you have any final thoughts or comments you'd like to share based on what you've seen and heard? We'll start with Poppy.
I'm just absorbing it all, and it's just fascinating, some of the facts that I'm learning about the way we learn, recording it for later, applying it later. A lot of ideas are running through my head. So thanks for all of the presentations.
Awesome. Mike, did you have any other comments that you wanted to share based on the other panelists' presentations?
I think you really curated a really interesting kind of panoply of 4 different views of the world from 4 different perspectives. I really think that the challenge that we face is not getting too absorbed in what we're doing and keeping our heads up and paying attention to what's happening around us. And I think that that's probably also true of all the people that we work with, all the employees of the organizations that we work with. They're struggling as well. And so the more that we understand that this challenge of a rapidly changing world filled with uncertainty and ambiguity is also what they're facing. And the more that we could take some of these techniques and solve the problems as fast as possible. I really like your last panelist's point about it's better to have it good than great, because good at least gives them a fighting chance to keep on top of it. So really thought that was a great line.
I did too. Anna, any final thoughts from you?
Thank you, Nicole. I agree with Mike. And just going back to the poll in the very beginning, the biggest challenge is integrating all of the technologies. And just to echo Mike's point, in regard to integrating all of the technologies, it may take a humongous amount of time and budgets and money to spend on integrating technologies, looking for tools. And then just going back to why are we doing this in the first place? And is there a way to use the technologies without full integration? Because technologies may change. How would you go about integration a year from now?
Very good point. I appreciate the time that you've all shared, and I like to try to keep it very close to my 1 o'clock. So no additional questions have come in from the audience, and I appreciate everyone's attendance and participation today. And thank you so much to our panelists for sharing what you've experienced and what you're doing in your roles today. I'm working on the programming for 2018 now. We're not going to be doing an event in December. I'm going to be working on the programming just for January and making some changes to the format of the event. And I'll be announcing the topic, but we'll have the next event on Wednesday, January 10th. So if you'd like to learn more, just stay in touch with me, and I'll make sure that you get the information as soon as I get it all worked out.